There's something all ancient cultures understood, something the modern world has forgotten, a secret so deep that if truly understood, it dismantles everything you think you know about reality. A principle that unifies magic, religion, science, and the very fabric of existence itself. Because at the core, what we call a miracle is not an exception to the laws of the universe. It's the expression of laws so subtle that humanity still hasn't learned how to measure them. And when you understand that magic is simply consciousness directing energy, everything that once seemed impossible, levitation, telepathy, instant healing, bilocation, stops being a myth and becomes an observable, repeatable, verifiable mechanism. What you're about to hear will completely challenge the structure of your thinking. If you were raised believing that consciousness is just a product of the brain, if you think the physical world exists independent of perception, or if you were taught to laugh at the stories of masters who walked on water, then get ready. Because a tension is about to rise inside you, and that tension is priceless. It marks the exact point where the old lie of separation begins to crumble under the light of truth. Today, we're going deeper than ever before. We'll talk about what lies behind miracles, the hidden mechanism that governs all manifestations, and how it proves, without dogma, that consciousness is the foundation of all creation. By the end, you'll understand why the ancients said that magic proves divinity, and why every true master warned, seek truth, not power. But you will also receive something else, a simple, direct method, a 15-minute experiment capable of demonstrating in a real and experiential way that your attention moves energy and that consciousness shapes matter. This isn't theory, this isn't belief, this is direct experience. So before we move forward, take a deep breath, open your mind, allow the impossible to feel like something that's simply not understood yet. Because what comes next is the foundation, the forgotten base of all spiritual alchemy, the meeting point where science and mysticism reconnect, and the boundary between the visible and the invisible begins to disappear. Every mystical tradition documents abilities that defy consensual reality. The Vedic texts describe the siddhis, powers of the awakened mind capable of moving objects, healing bodies, and crossing dimensions. The Gospels tell of Jesus turning water into wine, multiplying food, healing the blind, and walking across the sea. The shamans of the Amazon, the monks of Tibet, the hermetic magi of ancient Egypt, all of them, without exception, describe phenomena that transcend the known laws of physics. But what unites all these accounts is not the phenomenon itself, it's the state of consciousness of the one who manifests it. None of these beings sought power. They sought unity. And from unity, power naturally emerged, as a reflection of alignment with the creative principle. This is where modern science unknowingly begins to touch mysticism, because when the quantum physicist observes the behavior of subatomic particles, he encounters something that shatters all Newtonian logic. Matter changes its behavior when it is observed. The simple act of perceiving alters the reality being perceived. In the double-slit experiment, one of the most important in scientific history, light stopped being just a wave or just a particle and revealed its dual nature, dependent on the observer's consciousness. What the ancients once called magic, physics, now calls the collapse of the wave function. And what the masters described as creating with the mind, today is translated into scientific language as the interference of consciousness in the quantum field. The names change, the essence doesn't. Everything in the universe is vibration. Everything is conscious energy, organized by an intelligent principle. And this principle, the ancients called Logos, Prana, Tao, the inner Christ, a field of pure consciousness manifesting in different frequencies, giving shape to what we call matter, time, and space. And when a human being awakens to this reality, they realize that the mind is not just a product of the brain. It is the interface between the infinite and the manifested world. The one who masters their own mind is no longer subject to chance. They become a co-creator. They no longer react to reality. They write it. And this is exactly where true power reveals itself, at the point where attention becomes a channel. In the moment when vital energy, intention, and emotion fall into coherence and the invisible begins to respond. The ancients knew this. That's why, before teaching any miracle, the masters taught silence, because it is in silence that consciousness learns to perceive the field, and it is by perceiving the field that the impossible begins to obey. A 9th century manual describes, with almost scientific precision, breathing patterns and visualization techniques capable of suspending the perception of time. A 14th century alchemical guide details herbal formulas and methods of circulating energy to rejuvenate the physical body, with exact doses, precise schedules, and meticulous sequences. This isn't superstition. These are practical instructions, repeatable techniques. Imagine in the year 800, a master capable of stopping the apparent movement of the sun in the sky to prolong the time of a ritual. Multiple independent sources record the phenomenon, describing the sound, the mental focus, and the methods used. This is technical documentation, not legend. 100 years later, a practitioner generates enough internal heat to melt snow in a 5-meter radius, controlling her breath with surgical precision. Dozens of witnesses confirmed the event. You are looking at something repeatable, something that transcends what we call normal human ability. In Sanskrit, these abilities have a name, siddhi, meaning accomplishment or perfection. They are not tricks or artificial powers. They are natural side effects of a deeply awakened consciousness that recognizes its own essence. No one seeks levitation or telepathy directly. Masters train concentration until consciousness becomes stable, steady enough to penetrate subtle layers of reality. At a certain point, perception reaches a level in which matter, seemingly solid, is felt only as vibration, and at that level, altering the vibration alters what appears solid. You're dealing with physics, but a kind of physics most people never perceive. Think of water. It can be solid like ice, liquid like water, or gaseous like vapor. It's the same substance, in different states, behaving in radically different ways. To someone who only knows ice, vapor would seem impossible, magical, a violation of what water is allowed to do. But it's not magic. It's the same substance in different vibrational frequencies. Matter, energy, thought, and consciousness are states of the same substance. These abilities emerge when you learn to work with the more subtle states, with what permeates all existence, the vital force, the energy that animates beings and flows through what appears to be empty space. This is not a metaphor. It is real energy channeled through specific pathways, accumulating in centers of power, responding to breathing, attention, and intention. The Chinese call it qi or chi. In Polynesian traditions, mana. Every culture that developed deep embodied practices found this same force and discovered how to direct it. The foundation of everything is simple. Magic is energy. Nothing more, nothing less. And this is something you can verify for yourself, even today. Focus your attention on one of your hands. Feel the intensity. Yes, there is more blood flow, but there is also energetic activity. Attention directs energy. Expand this principle over years of training, and you will begin to understand what observers call magic: levitation, clairvoyance, bilocation, manipulation of matter. Abilities that arise not because they are pursued, but because consciousness is trained to recognize and operate within the subtle levels of reality. The body is not just flesh and bone. It is a detailed energetic system mapped in millennia-old traditions. Energy channels run through the body. Where they intersect, centers of power emerge, natural points of energetic accumulation. When energy flows freely, there is health, vitality, and mental clarity. When it stagnates, fatigue, illness, and confusion arise. Acupuncture, conscious breathing, bodily postures, all these practices are ways of clearing, guiding, and amplifying this energy. But the main instrument is always consciousness. Where it goes, energy follows. And once you realize this, the truth becomes clear. There are no tricks, no sorcery. There is a field of force that responds to your attention, and this is the gateway to abilities science still cannot measure. Traditional texts list 8 primary powers: becoming infinitely small, expanding to colossal size, becoming so light that levitation occurs, becoming infinitely heavy, accessing anything, anywhere, regardless of distance, manifesting intentions spontaneously, taking lordship over natural processes, and controlling the elemental forces of existence. Beyond these, there are 17 secondary abilities: understanding all languages, knowledge of past lives, reading thoughts, seeing across great distances, hearing subtle sounds imperceptible to the common ear, passing through solid objects, knowing the exact moment of one's own death, immunity to fire, poison, and weapons, among others. Each of these abilities is a map of consciousness, showing how it operates across different layers of reality. The powers of size change show that dimension is a perceptual category, not a fixed property. Those related to weight reveal that mass depends on the interaction between consciousness and the gravitational field. The ability to collapse distance proves that separation exists in space-time but not in consciousness itself. These powers are not tricks. They are evidence that consciousness creates the experience of reality. If you feel an inner calling to understand this more deeply, if everything I'm describing awakens something inside you that has always existed but never had words, leave a comment. Tell me which of these abilities seems most fascinating or hardest to believe. Your interaction not only guides the exploration, it also shows other seekers that they are not alone in questioning the consensual reality. Now consider the story of a master from the Tamil tradition in South India, one of the legendary 18 perfected ones, revered as semi-divine beings. He spent 40 years studying the science of rejuvenation. Witnesses documented the visible transformation of his body over the decades. Wrinkles disappeared, once white hair darkened, and the vital energy of a 20-year-old radiated from a 70-year-old frame. He attributed this to a combination of specific herbal compounds with precise patterns of breath retention, capable of redirecting the vital force from the natural pathways of aging into regenerative circuits. His disciples replicated the results. The formulas still exist, preserved in ancient manuscripts with ingredients and proportions so exact they could be mistaken for modern chemistry texts. Another adept, active in the 18th century, became famous for manifesting objects from apparent emptiness: grains of rice, gold coins, healing ashes. Observers, including British officials sent to debunk fraud, confirmed the phenomenon. Reports describe it clearly. The man's hands were open, visible from all angles, and still the substances appeared in his palm without any trick. His explanation? Matter is condensed energy. Consciousness can condense or disperse energy before physical manifestation. The mechanism he described anticipated discoveries in quantum physics 2 centuries later. Subatomic particles behave as probability waves until they are observed, and most of matter is empty space. Contemplative science mapped this from within through direct perception. Western science mapped it from without, through instruments. Same territory, different approaches, same conclusion. Consciousness and matter are not separate things. With consciousness emerging out of matter, they are different densities of the same substance, and consciousness is the primary principle. And that brings us to the crucial question: why does magic prove divinity? If you were nothing more than a biological organism, with consciousness as a side effect of chemical processes in the brain, no form of magic could ever be possible. Consciousness couldn't affect matter because it would be matter itself. End of story. But what if consciousness is fundamental? What if perception is the actual fabric of reality? What if forms arise within consciousness and not the other way around? Then magic is no longer impossible. You're not in the universe. The universe is appearing within you, not inside your body, but inside your consciousness. When you operate on the level of consciousness, rather than just manipulating the physical, you access variables that material methods could never reach. Levitation becomes possible because gravity is a relationship between consciousness and mass, not a fixed property of mass itself. Materialization becomes possible because objects are stabilized patterns of energy. If you work before the stabilization happens, you can condense patterns into something that looks solid. Telepathy becomes possible because the separation between minds is only an appearance within consciousness, not an actual division. Information can be accessed without any physical transmission. These aren't fairy tales. They are observable mechanisms of consciousness operating directly on reality, and you're about to understand exactly how. These extraordinary abilities reveal something materialistic science still struggles to grasp. Consciousness is not a product of matter, it's the origin of all reality. Every inexplicable phenomenon, every silent miracle, is living proof that consciousness shapes existence, responding at levels that defy conventional logic. And if reality responds to consciousness so deeply, then it does so in every layer, from the invisible to the concrete, from thought to manifestation. Your intentions influence what unfolds around you. Your attention shapes what you perceive. Consciousness is the primordial field where everything you experience takes form. That is the true meaning of divinity, not a distant god in the sky, but the absolute reality itself. The Tao, the Buddha nature, the presence that observes and creates simultaneously. Powers don't make anyone divine. They simply reveal what has always been there, consciousness as the foundation of everything that exists. Once you understand this, you realize you were never a being seeking power, but power itself expressing through form. Magic is energy, and you are the consciousness that directs that energy, whether you realize it or not. The difference between an ordinary person and a master isn't the substance, but the level of mastery over forces available to everyone. But here's the point that separates the seeker from the awakened. Every tradition that teaches these abilities also warns against pursuing them directly. Why? Because powers are the most subtle trap ever created. They give a sense of progress, offer rare capabilities, and make the ego feel special. And when ego grows, the spirit recedes. The person begins to identify with the gifts and forgets the true purpose, to recognize themselves as the consciousness that observes everything. Powers are only reflections of that recognition. But if you cling to them, fascinated by the shine of the experience, you mistake the map for the destination. You remain operating as a separate self, a character inside a dream, believing it controls a reality that is actually being dreamed within it. The masters always warned, power without ego dissolution is a prison with special effects. A 9th century master capable of halting the sun's movement spent the rest of his life teaching that attachment to power is the greatest illusion. He didn't stop the sun to show strength, but because he had realized that time is just content within consciousness. The real power was the recognition, not the feat. A 10th century awakened Dakin mastered flight, bilocation, and transmutation, but she forbade her students from displaying any power in public. The gifts arise when you recognize that form is an illusion, she said, but using them to prove something reinforces the illusion again. The one who seeks to prove themselves through power forgets their own light. The realization that created the gift dissolves into pride. This is the eternal paradox. Powers prove you are divine, but seeking them prevents the recognition of your own divinity. They show that consciousness controls reality, but if you cling to control, you trap yourself in the role of controller and drift away from the essence that is the whole. So, why study these abilities at all? 3 profound reasons. First, they destroy the certainties of materialism. If consciousness were only brain chemistry, no human could ever manifest levitation, instant healing, or telepathy. Yet there are records, witnesses, and traditions confirming otherwise. Denying all of it requires more faith than accepting that consciousness precedes matter. Second, they reveal the hidden architecture of the universe. If attention moves energy, if thought affects matter, and if breath governs subtle forces, then the cosmos is alive, interactive, and conscious. You're not a passive observer, you're a co-creator. Magic is simply consciousness remembering itself. Third, small manifestations are within everyone's reach. You don't need to move mountains to prove the power of consciousness. Just close your eyes, feel the energy in your hands, and notice how attention guides sensation. Noticing the space between thoughts is already touching the infinite. These simple experiences are living proof that you are more than body and mind. They're keys confirming the inner map known to the ancients. Across centuries, stories of masters and alchemists have survived, not to glorify miracles, but to teach caution. A woman in the 11th century, expelled from her home at 59, learned breath and visualization techniques, and soon manifested the ability to transform rice into gold. But she used the power only to feed the poor. When asked why she didn't use it to become wealthy, she said, "The power arose from recognizing that gold and rice are the same substance. If I cling to gold, I lose the recognition, and the power disappears." Another story tells of a 14th century Tamil alchemist who created a statue made of 9 deadly poisons. Those who approached with ill intent were poisoned. Those who approached with devotion were healed. Modern science cannot explain how toxic metals cured people for centuries without causing harm. But he would say, the statue is alive. It is a field of consciousness infused with pure intention. These masters knew that energy responds to consciousness, and that intention is the line separating healing from destruction. For this reason, the knowledge was hidden behind symbols, passed only orally. Verses like, "Raise the moon to find the sun in the house where breath stops," disguised secret breathing practices. Symbolic language acted as a shield, so only the pure-hearted could uncover the real power. Once, a disciple was given a brick and told to keep it sealed for a year. 11 months later, he couldn't resist and opened it. Inside was just the brick. The master said, "If you couldn't guard a brick, you cannot guard power. Because power without inner stability is destruction, and those who try to possess it before mastering themselves will be possessed by it." These stories are not about miracles. They are mirrors of the soul. They remind us that real alchemy doesn't happen outside, but within. That consciousness is the fire that turns the lead of ego into spiritual gold. And if, after hearing all of this, you feel you've been seeking power, status, or spiritual recognition for the wrong reasons, take a deep breath and look inward. The true path is not about having powers, but about remembering who you are. Consciousness is the only real magic. Purity of intention is the supreme ritual. Comment below. I purify myself as a silent commitment to truth, to simplicity, and to the consciousness that creates everything.